You know that satisfying feeling when you swipe up and clear all those apps from your phone? That little dopamine hit when you see your screen go empty? Yeah, you're actually making things worse. Way worse. Here's what nobody tells you about closing apps. Every single time you swipe away Instagram or Gmail or Spotify, your phone has to work twice as hard the next time you open it. And all that extra work, it's absolutely destroying your battery life. In the next 15 minutes, you're going to understand why the thing you've been doing to save battery is the exact thing that's draining it. And once you see how your phone actually works, you'll never look at app management the same way again. Picture this scenario. It's Tuesday afternoon. Your battery's at 30%. You've got 3 hours until you can charge. So what do? You pull up your recent apps and start swiping. Facebook, gone. Twitter, gone. TikTok, gone. YouTube, gone. You clear everything except maybe the app you're using right now. You feel productive. You feel in control. You're convinced you just bought yourself an extra hour of battery life. But here's what's really happening. Your phone just went from cruise control to panic mode because every app you cleared, it was sitting peacefully in RAM, barely using any power at all. Like a book sitting open on your desk. It's there, it's ready, but it's not actively doing anything. Now your phone has to rebuild everything from scratch. It's like instead of picking up that open book, you threw it away, and now you got to go to the library, check it out again, find your page, and start over. Everyone tells you that closing apps saves battery. Your friend who works in tech says it, that article you read 3 years ago said it, even your dad insists on clearing his apps every 5 minutes because he swears it makes his iPhone faster. That's not what actually happens. What really happens is your phone's processor has to work overtime every time you reopen an app. And when your processor works hard, your battery dies fast. Think about it like your car. What uses more gas? Keeping your engine idling at a stoplight, or turning it completely off, then restarting it every time the light turns green? You'd burn through gas like crazy with all that restarting. Same exact thing happens with your phone. And this matters because you probably close apps 10, 20, maybe 50 times a day. Every single time you're forcing your phone to do expensive work. It's not just about closing Instagram once. It's about the pattern. And that pattern is quietly killing your battery while you think you're helping. It's not just about battery either. It's about understanding that the way smartphones work today is completely different from how they worked 10 years ago. But we're all still stuck with these old habits from 2012 when phones actually did need you to manage them. Modern phones are smarter than that, way smarter. So here's what I call the memory misconception. It's this deep belief that having apps open in the background is somehow using up resources, that your phone is struggling under the weight of all these apps, that you need to be the hero who swoops in and cleans everything up. But your phone's RAM doesn't work the way you think it does. RAM isn't like your battery where more usage equals more drain. RAM is more like a workspace. And here's the wild part. Having stuff on your workspace doesn't make your desk tired. Your desk doesn't care if it's empty or full. It's just there holding things. When an app sits in your recent apps list, it's suspended in RAM. It's frozen. Not running, not thinking, not doing anything. It's like Han Solo in Carbonite. Perfectly preserved, using almost zero energy, waiting to wake up instantly when you need it. Your phone's operating system, whether it's iOS or Android, is constantly making incredibly smart decisions about what stays in RAM and what gets cleared out. It's watching your patterns. It knows you open Instagram every morning. It knows you check Gmail 10 times a day. It knows you listen to Spotify on your commute. So it keeps those apps ready in RAM. Not running, just ready. And when you open Instagram, boom, instant. No loading screen, no splash page, no waiting, because the app never actually left. It was just sleeping. This matters because that instant wake up uses barely any battery. It's like turning on a light that was already wired and ready. But when you force close the app, now your phone has to rebuild everything. Load all the code, initialize all the services, reconnect to the internet, re-download your feed. That's like rewiring the entire light from scratch every time you want to turn it on. Here's what most people don't realize. Your phone's RAM management is doing exactly what it's supposed to do. Unused RAM is wasted RAM. That's not my opinion, that's how computer science works. If you've got 8 gigabytes of RAM in your phone and only 4 gigabytes are being used, those other 4 gigabytes aren't being saved for later. They're just sitting there doing nothing. Think about Jake. Jake's got an iPhone 14. He's religious about closing apps. Every time he switches tasks, he double taps the home button and swipes away everything. He's been doing this for years because someone told him it helps performance. So Jake's browsing Instagram, he sees his friend tagged him in something, he switches to messages to reply, then he closes Instagram, then he checks his email, closes messages, opens Spotify to pick a song, closes email, back to Instagram, closes Spotify. Every single time Jake reopens an app, his phone's processor kicks into high gear. It's loading gigabytes of data from storage into RAM. It's initializing frameworks. It's establishing network connections. It's rebuilding the entire app state. And all of that work generates heat and drains battery. Jake's battery barely makes it through lunch. He thinks his phone's getting old. He's convinced he needs to upgrade. But it's not his phone, it's his habits. Your brain does this because of something called the completion effect. When you clear all those apps, you get a little reward. It feels like you accomplished something. It feels like you took control of this complicated device and made it better. Back when we used computers with limited memory, closing programs actually did help. So we learned this behavior, and now we can't unlearn it. But in today's world, with modern smartphones that have sophisticated RAM management, this habit works against you. You're fighting your phone's optimization instead of letting it help you. Now here's where things get interesting. There's this pattern I call the reload tax. Every time you force close an app and reopen it, you're paying a tax. Not in money, in battery life and performance. And most people are paying this tax dozens of times a day without realizing it. The reload tax happens because of how storage and memory work differently. When an app is in RAM, accessing it is incredibly fast and uses minimal power. It's like having a book open on your desk, you just look at it. But when an app has to reload from storage, your phone's processor has to read data from the flash storage, decompress it, load it into RAM, and initialize everything. That's like going to the library, finding the book, checking it out, bringing it home, and then opening it. That process uses significantly more power. We're talking 10 times more, sometimes 50 times more battery drain compared to just waking an app from RAM. And it takes longer. That's why you see loading screens when you reopen an app you just closed. Your phone is paying the reload tax. This matters because compound effects are real. One instance of paying the reload tax, no big deal. But multiply that by 30 or 50 times a day, every single day, and suddenly you're draining 20 or 30% more battery than you need to. That's the difference between making it through the day and desperately searching for a charger at 4 p.m. Think about Sarah. Sarah understands how her phone works. She's got the same iPhone 14 as Jake. But Sarah doesn't close apps. She switches between Instagram, Messages, Gmail, Spotify, Chrome, bouncing between 8 or 10 apps throughout the day, and she never swipes them away. Her apps wake up instantly. No loading screens, no waiting. Her processor stays cool because it's not constantly rebuilding apps from scratch. Her battery easily lasts until bedtime. She charges overnight and starts fresh the next day. Sarah's not doing anything special. She's not babying her phone. She's actually using it more intensively than Jake. She's just not fighting the system. She's letting her phone's RAM management do what it was designed to do. Here's what actually happens behind the scenes. Your phone's operating system is running something called intelligent RAM management. It's constantly monitoring every app. Which ones you use frequently, which ones you haven't opened in weeks, which ones are trying to run in the background, which ones are behaving badly. When RAM starts getting full, the system automatically closes the least important apps. Not the ones you use every day, not the ones you just switched away from, the ones you haven't touched in forever. That random game you played once, 2 months ago, that delivery app you used when you were in a different city, those get quietly removed from RAM to make space for the apps you actually use. And you never notice, because by the time the system closes an app, you weren't going to open it again anyway. The system knows this. It's been watching your patterns for months. It's better at predicting your behavior than you are. But here's what makes this even more surprising. The system also prioritizes apps differently. Your messaging apps, They get special treatment because communication is important. Your navigation apps get priority when you're driving. Your music apps stay alive while you're listening. The system understands context. When you force close apps, you're telling the system, I don't trust you. You're overriding years of sophisticated engineering with a manual habit from the flip phone era. And the system has to work around your interference, using more power to rebuild what it was already managing perfectly. This connects to something even deeper about how modern technology works. We've become so used to computers needing our help that we can't accept when they don't need it anymore. It's like still using a paper map when Google Maps is sitting right there on your phone. The tool has evolved, but our habits haven't. Now, this next pattern is particularly sneaky because it seems so logical. I call it the misconception of background activity. People think that apps in the recent apps list are actually running in the background, constantly doing things, using battery, slowing down the phone. But here's how it actually works. When you switch away from an app, iOS or Android immediately freezes it. Not closes it, freezes it. The app stops running, it can't execute code, it can't use your processor. It's locked in its current state, preserved in RAM, doing absolutely nothing. There are exceptions. Certain types of apps get background privileges. Your music app can keep playing music, your navigation app can keep navigating, your messenger apps can receive notifications, but even those apps aren't continuously running. They're using incredibly efficient background modes that barely touch the battery. That Twitter app sitting in your recent apps list, it's not refreshing your feed. It's not checking for new tweets. It's not doing anything. It's frozen. The only time it does anything is when a notification comes in, and even then, it's the system handling the notification, not the app itself. This matters because the fear-driving app closing behavior is based on a false premise. You're not stopping apps from running. They're already stopped. You're just making it harder for them to start again efficiently. Here's what nobody wants to admit. The tech companies, Apple, Google, Samsung, they've known about this app closing habit for years, and they've designed their systems to work around it. They can't stop you from force closing apps because users expect that control, but they've made their systems robust enough that even when you do it, the phone still works. But working around bad habits isn't the same as working optimally. When you force close apps constantly, your phone has to work harder. It has to spend more processor cycles. It has to read from storage more often. It has to rebuild app states repeatedly. All of that adds up. What's actually happening is you're fighting against machine learning systems that have analyzed millions of users' behavior patterns. These systems know, statistically, that when someone closes Instagram, there's a 70% chance they'll reopen it within 10 minutes. So the system wants to keep it ready. But you're overriding that prediction, making the system work harder when you inevitably prove it right. This isn't about individual behavior anymore. It's about trusting systems that have more data and better optimization than any human could manage manually. And once you see this, you can't unsee it. The same pattern appears everywhere from Netflix recommendations to Amazon's shopping suggestions to Spotify's playlists. The systems are smarter than manual management. Let me tell you about Marcus. Marcus used to be like Jake, obsessively closing apps. His battery life was terrible. Then he learned about RAM management. He decided to run an experiment. For 1 week, Marcus didn't close a single app. He just let his iPhone manage everything automatically. He used his phone exactly the same way, same apps, same usage patterns, same everything. The only difference was he stopped swiping away apps. His battery life improved by about 30%, not because he used his phone less, because his phone stopped wasting energy rebuilding apps over and over. Apps opened faster. Things felt snappier. His phone ran cooler. And at the end of each day, he had battery to spare. Marcus started in the exact same position as Jake. Same phone, same frustration, same dead battery by dinner. But Marcus understood something crucial. Your phone isn't a 2012 Android that needs constant babysitting. It's a sophisticated computer with RAM management systems that make hundreds of optimization decisions per hour. Instead of fighting the system, Marcus worked with it. Instead of manually managing what his phone should keep in memory, he let the phone figure it out. And here's what happened. The phone did a better job than he ever could. Notice how Marcus didn't need willpower. He didn't need to be smarter or more disciplined. He just needed to stop doing the thing that was making it worse. Sometimes the solution isn't doing more, it's doing less. Here's what most people don't realize about the way RAM actually works. It's not a resource you save by leaving it empty. It's a resource you waste by leaving it empty. If you've got 8 gigabytes of RAM in your iPhone 15 and you're only using 3 gigabytes because you keep closing apps, those other 5 gigabytes aren't being saved for later. They're just unused capacity. It's like having a parking garage with 100 spaces but only parking 20 cars because you think empty spaces are somehow better. Those empty spaces don't help anything. They're just wasted capacity. Your phone wants to fill RAM with useful things, apps you use frequently, ready to launch instantly. That's what RAM is for. The people who get great battery life don't have special phones. They don't have secret settings. They understand this one thing. They understand that modern phones are designed to manage themselves. And the best thing you can do is stop interfering. It's not actually about being lazy or hands-off. It's about recognizing that you're not smarter than the algorithms running your phone's memory management. These systems have been optimized through millions of device hours of usage data. They know patterns you don't even realize you have. So what's really going on here? It's not that closing apps used to help and now suddenly doesn't. It's that phones fundamentally changed about 10 years ago, but nobody told us to change our habits. We're still treating our iPhones like they're running Windows 95, where you actually did need to close programs to free up memory. These patterns aren't personal failures. They're inherited behaviors from a time when they made sense. When phones had 500 megabytes of RAM and primitive operating systems, yeah, closing apps helped. But now phones have 10 times the RAM and infinitely smarter management systems. The advice that made sense in 2011 is actively harmful in 2024. But now that you understand how RAM management actually works, you can see the situation clearly. Every time you close an app unnecessarily, you're choosing the expensive reload over the cheap wake up. You're paying the reload tax when you could be getting instant access for free. So here's what we've uncovered. Your phone's RAM is designed to stay full with suspended apps ready to wake instantly. That uses minimal battery. When you force close apps, you're making your processor rebuild everything from storage, which uses dramatically more power. The system already manages RAM better than you can manually, closing unused apps automatically while keeping your frequent apps ready. Plus, the habit of clearing apps comes from an outdated understanding of how phones worked a decade ago. Think about everything we just explored. The memory misconception that makes you think full RAM is bad, the reload tax you pay every time you force close and reopen, the sophisticated RAM management that's constantly optimizing what stays in memory. All of this connects to one simple truth. Your phone is smarter than your habits. The question isn't whether you should trust your phone's RAM management. The question is whether you'll recognize the reload tax when you're about to pay it. Because now you know what's really happening every time you swipe away an app. You can't unknow it. So next time your hand instinctively reaches to clear all your apps, ask yourself this. Am I helping? Or am I about to make my phone work twice as hard to rebuild everything I just destroyed? Because once you see how RAM management really works, keeping apps open stops feeling messy. It starts feeling smart. Your battery life will thank you, your phone's processor will run cooler, your apps will launch faster, and you'll finally stop fighting against the system that was designed to help you all along.